Wow. 5.5. It's all tied up, you know, right in the moment where it felt like, you know, Hikaru had not achieved anything from that opening. A gift from Denis, and we're back tied up.
No, it's just so frustrating. Denis, he works very hard every time he beats Hikaru. Just to throw away a game like that in a position that you know you're okay and you're trending towards a draw.
Yeah, he thought he was so okay that was a casual move. Let me trade rooks, you know, the dark squares versus the light squares, not appreciating that Hikaru's Rookie 1 did have an intention, and now we're back in this English setup, more space being gained on the queen side for Denis here. This is something that we've seen before.
We have, but in this position, the A file's opened up, so Hikaru's rook on 8 is actually doing something. It's not looking at an isolated pawn. So this is a better version than the other English positions we've had, and I mean, Hikaru's got to be relieved just picking up that point, you know, stopping the momentum.
Yep.
Denis still wants to open up that light squared bishop, so you're trying to look at the trades. You don't want to trade too much because if you take on d4, you'd open up the e file for black's rook. So I'm looking at moves like maybe knight g5. I can reroute the knight to e4. I don't want to open up the e file, but I do want to open up my light squared bishop. Another move might be bishop e3. We've seen bishop g5 played. Why bishop g5? Sometimes you trade away your bishop for this knight so you can place your own knight on d5.
That's right. The light squares here on the diagonal are key. And the bishop on g4 makes it annoying to play the move e3. You can play e3 right now, but it would trade a lot of pieces in the position. Bishop e3 is accepting double pawns on the f3 square. If the knight captures on f3, you don't need to play bishop takes. You could take with the pawn, later look to play f4 once you move the knight on c3.
Yeah, knight d7. Hikaru is really encouraging Denis. Please take on d4. Let me play e takes d4. Now it's a critical moment. I think knight g5, some sort of, he's done well in these positions when he's kept the pieces on the board. That's when Hikaru's made some mistakes in some of those rich middle games.
Well, rook e1, if you just want to defend the e-pawn, that's a little bit of a preparation for capturing on d4. Otherwise, you do need to make a decision, and knight d7 indicates the bishop's opening up from g7, the knight's coming to c5, now might be the moment.
Knight e4. I thought knight d5. Something looks wrong here. I actually like knight d5, because if c6 was ever played, that would be a tender pawn. Knight e4, I think Denis is arguing if you play f5, you can attack me, but then you're just critically weakening the light squares, and your bishop loses some escape squares.
That's right. Yeah, I wonder what can be, I'm also wondering, okay, h3 was played. I think that black could, in some cases, play a move like knight c5 just to open up the e file and get rid of that knight, which moves voluntarily here.
So knight b3, if you play knight b3, you have to calculate knight a4. The knight wants to jump into c3. Even right now, knight a4, knight c3 is an idea.
That's critical. Very strong. Hits the rook, the queen, the e2 pawn.
So knight a4, I think Denis is saying, you know what? You can play knight a4. I'll play maybe queen d2. And after knight c3, I'll meet it with rook a1. You won't get the fork in. It is important at some point. White needs to move their own knight on f3 and generate pressure on this diagonal.
Yeah,
but Hikaru's making it hard.
How do you defend d4, right? Knight a4 is very committal, because if knight c3 doesn't work out tactically, d4 is lacking support permanently. There's no c5. You can always take en passant c6. So I don't know if you're ready to commit with knight a4. You have to have the whole thing calculated out. A mistake means you drop the d pawn, and that might ruin the entire equality.
And that's why Hikaru's taking time, and he decided, I can't hold on to the d4 pawn, I'm going to trade. It's a more simple position, but also static. And Denis has done quite well in these positions. Not very active. In fact, look at black's bishops. They're not particularly dangerous. Black does have the e file. That's the main benefit. Oh, sorry, that's the main benefit of the double pawns on the d file. We know d4 is weak. Where's the counterplay? e2 at some point.
Exactly. Well, I'm looking at this d4 pawn. Now, you can support it with queen f6. That guards d4 from the queen and the knight. I don't see how white adds more pressure to it, but queen f6 has me wondering, what is black actually going to do next? Maybe it's going to be playing g5. Maybe it's going to be moving the bishop on e6 in order to uncover an attack on e2.
Sorry. Queen f6, rook b8. OK, we're caught up now.
And taking on c6, OK, if you take with the pawn, the queen is actually hit from the rook on b8. And even though that you're attacking the bishop on d7, you have to respond to the queen first. So I understand trying to open things up for white here. The e2 pawn is the weakness versus the d4 pawn. It's a huge struggle here. Eric, just which pawn is going to be weaker? Who can capitalize? White would love to play, if there's time, rook a4 and take on d4. That's why black had to take this way.
Yeah, who gets the threats first? I mean, it takes a while for black to double up on e2, and some positions maybe white even plays bishop f1 to reinforce it. It's going to be hard to take d4, but after rook a4, rook e1 next.
Yep.
I think in terms of trading weaknesses, how I look at this from white's perspective, I don't want to lose e2 for d4. d4, I just want to pressure.
Well, this is a fork as well. I mean, you'll happily trade c5 for the d4 pawn. I'm surprised that
Hikaru could have taken on d4 and taken on e2, broken the pawn chain.
Yep. That's
now h6 is hanging in some lines, right? If you take on d4, take on e2, maybe queen takes h6, and all of a sudden, rook h4, we see checkmating ideas.
This is critical, though, because if you don't take, what do you play? And he's gone for this exactly. Calculated rook b2. Are these threats happening first?
Well, they're in time trouble now, so even though white's up a pawn, anybody's game.
Yeah, the bishop from, okay, there's that rook h4 move. Of course, queen e5 was played in full anticipation of this. Rook on e8, looking to go to e2.
Not sure I like that decision. Even though white's up a pawn, black's very active, and it's hard to imagine white ever being in a position to activate this rook on f1 with double rooks.
And here we go, pawns exchange. Black can always win that pawn on c5. In fact, he does it right away. That has to be a mistake.
No, this is good for black. You can double rooks again, and you're just playing up a rook.
The king's going to go to g3. Smart to activate. But that black king, as you're highlighting, can come straight into the middle of the board.
Rook c3 even. That king's awkward. You have to move it back.
Black can play g5 to fix the pawns as well.
He didn't want to take h3. He just wants to... He's waiting for a mistake. Denis is under 7 seconds.
Now, this move is annoying to face, though. d4 is now hit by both rooks, d6 and d1. You have to trade and push the pawn, but now white's king can come around to help the pieces corral that d3 pawn.
Yeah, d2, you can bring your king in. And now Hikaru has to decide, does he want to defend d2 or give it up to try to win f2, transition to a drawn endgame?
King e3, rook c3 was very tricky there. Oh, what a weird position. He wants to queen that pawn, but he just can't do it yet.
You mentioned that. Pinning.
That's a strong idea.
But Denis under 4 seconds. This is very tough.
Nobody could move. The pawn is so close to queening, but everything is just frozen.
Hikaru needs to find a tricky move at some point. Denis is building up a bit of time. You know you can't queen the pawn. You're looking for tricks.
So the move that you mentioned, when the bishop's on f3 and the king's on g3, you can try to pin it with this rook a3 move, but it's just not available.
Can't allow the king to get to e3. So Hikaru might have to repeat.
Oh my goodness. Chance is there.